The scent of gunpowder hung in the air before I even materialized. That's how I knew something had already gone wrong. My chrono device hummed against my left wrist, the blue light fading as the temporal displacement field collapsed around me. The alley was dark, wet from recent rain, and reeked of horse manure and coal smoke. Washington, April 14th, 1865. Good Friday. The night everything would change, and I was here to witness it. Only witness it. Those were my orders. But orders in reality have a way of diverging when you're standing in the shadows of history. I pressed myself against the brick wall, adjusting my brown coat and checking my chronofiber equipment. Everything was functioning normally, which meant the displacement had been clean. No temporal anomalies detected. The device on my wrist displayed the coordinates 38.8977 77.0365 Ford's Theater. I was 3 blocks away and I had exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes until John Wilkes Booth would fire the shot that would kill Abraham Lincoln. My mission was simple: observe, record, and report. The Temporal Observation Bureau wanted first-hand documentation of the assassination for the historical archives. Nothing more. No intervention, no interference. No matter what I saw, no matter what I felt, I was to let history unfold exactly as it had always unfolded. Simple. Except nothing about time travel is ever simple. I moved through the alley toward 10th Street, my boots splashing through puddles that reflected the gaslight from the street lamps. The city was alive with celebration. The war was over. Robert E. Lee had surrendered just 5 days ago at Appomattox Courthouse, and Washington was drunk on victory and relief. Flags hung from every building. People laughed and sang in the streets. They had no idea that their joy would turn to ashes before midnight. I emerged onto the main street and immediately had to dodge a carriage rattling past, the driver shouting something about the theater being full tonight. Ford's Theater was presenting Our American Cousin, a popular comedy, and President Lincoln would be attending with his wife Mary. Everyone knew. The newspapers had announced it. Security would be lax because the war was over, because the president wanted to show the people that peace had returned, because nobody believed that danger could still lurk in the heart of a victorious capital. Nobody except me and John Wilkes Booth. I walked with purpose but not haste, blending into the crowd of evening revelers. My period clothing was authentic enough. I'd studied the era extensively, but I still felt conspicuous, as if everyone could see the chrono device hidden beneath my sleeve, as if they could sense that I didn't belong to their time. A woman bumped into me as she hurried past, her wide crinoline skirt rustling against my legs. "Pardon me, sir," she said, her voice breathless with excitement. She couldn't have been more than 25, with auburn hair pinned up beneath a small hat adorned with feathers. Her green eyes met mine for just a moment, and I saw something there that made me pause. Recognition? No, that was impossible. But there was something. An intelligence. A sharpness that seemed out of place among the giddy celebrations. "No harm done, miss," I said, tipping my hat. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Are you attending the theater tonight?" "I'm considering it." "You should." She glanced over her shoulder, toward Ford's Theater visible down the street. "It will be a night no one forgets." The way she said it sent a chill down my spine. Before I could respond, she was gone, disappearing into the crowd with surprising speed. I stood there for a moment, troubled. That exchange had felt wrong somehow. Calculated. My analytical mind, the one that had made me valuable to the Bureau, began processing the encounter. Her words, her manner, the way she'd looked at me. It was almost as if she'd been waiting for me. But that was paranoia talking. I was just on edge because of the mission, because I knew what was coming. I continued toward the theater, checking my chrono device discreetly. 3 hours and 52 minutes until the shot. I needed to position myself where I could observe the presidential box without drawing attention. The Bureau had provided detailed schematics of the theater, and I'd memorized every entrance, exit, and sightline. The streets grew more crowded as I approached Ford's Theater. The brick building loomed 3 stories high, decorated with American flags and bunting. A large banner proclaimed tonight's performance, and people streamed through the main entrance in their finest evening wear. I could hear the murmur of the crowd inside, the tuning of the orchestra, the excited chatter of a city finally able to enjoy itself after 4 years of brutal war. I moved to a side entrance, the one I knew would be less guarded. A young man in uniform stood there, but he was distracted, flirting with a flower girl. I slipped past with a nod and found myself in a dim corridor that smelled of sawdust and paint. The theater's backstage area was a maze of narrow passages and dressing rooms. I navigated it carefully using my mental map, heading for the back staircase that would take me to the second floor. That's when I heard the voices. 2 men, speaking in low, urgent tones. I froze, pressing myself into a darkened alcove beneath the stairs. Through the gaps in the wooden steps above me, I could see their shadows. Certain he'll go through with it? The first voice was nervous, young. Booth? He's committed. You've seen him. He believes he's saving the South, avenging the Confederacy. He'll do it. The second voice was older, more assured. Our concern is the aftermath. We need to ensure that the narrative is controlled. The mad actor, the desperate Southern sympathizer, nothing more. And if someone suspects? Who would suspect? Lincoln's own people have been careless with his security. It will look like exactly what it is, an assassination by a deranged individual. The conspiracy will be discovered, Booth's accomplices rounded up, and that will be the end of it. My heart was pounding. This wasn't right. In all the historical records, the conspiracy had been relatively simple. Booth and his co-conspirators planning to decapitate the Union government by killing Lincoln, Vice President Johnson, and Secretary of State Seward simultaneously. But this conversation suggested something deeper, something organized beyond Booth's circle of Confederate sympathizers. The men moved, their footsteps echoing as they walked away. I waited until silence returned, then carefully emerged from my hiding place. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the implications of what I'd just heard. The Bureau's briefing had been thorough. I knew the accepted history, but what if the accepted history was incomplete? What if there had been additional conspirators, puppet masters pulling strings behind the scenes, who had been erased from the historical record? I climbed the stairs quickly, my mind racing. This was exactly why chrononauts were forbidden from interfering. If I acted on this information, if I changed anything, I could create a temporal paradox that would ripple forward through time with unpredictable consequences. But if I did nothing, if I stood by and watched while knowing that there was more to this conspiracy than history recorded, could I live with that? The second-floor corridor was empty. I moved to a small maintenance closet I'd identified in my planning, a space with a narrow window that overlooked the presidential box. I slipped inside, leaving the door cracked just enough to see. The theater was filling rapidly. The orchestra played a cheerful tune. People laughed and called to friends across the aisles. The presidential box, draped with flags and decorated with a portrait of George Washington, stood empty, waiting for its occupants. I checked my chronometer again. 2 hours and 38 minutes. The closet was cramped and stuffy, but it gave me the perfect vantage point. I could see the entire stage, the audience, and most importantly, the state box where Lincoln would sit. I settled in to wait, trying to calm my racing thoughts. But I couldn't stop thinking about that conversation, about the woman on the street, about the feeling that something was happening beyond the scope of the history I knew. An hour passed. The theater continued to fill. I watched faces in the crowd, men in top hats and tailcoats, women in elaborate dresses, all of them eager to see their president, to celebrate the Union's victory. They were so innocent, so unaware of what was coming. It made my chest tight. Then she appeared, the auburn-haired woman from the street. She entered through a side door and took a seat in the balcony, but not just any seat, one with a direct view of the presidential box and, more importantly, a direct view of the corridor behind it, where Booth would make his approach. My blood ran cold. She wasn't here by accident. She positioned herself carefully, adjusting her skirts, then produced a small notebook from her reticule and began to write, glancing up periodically at the presidential box in the corridor. I needed to know who she was. More than that, I needed to know what she was doing here. But leaving my observation point would mean abandoning my mission. The Bureau would have my head. Temporal observation protocols were absolute. Except protocols meant nothing if I was watching something that shouldn't be happening. I made my decision. I slipped out of the closet and moved quickly but quietly along the corridor, descending the stairs to the main floor. I circled around through the backstage area, climbing a different set of stairs that would bring me to the balcony level where she sat. The performance had started. On stage, actors performed the comedy, and the audience laughed at all the right moments. But I wasn't paying attention to the play. I was watching the woman. I approached her seat from behind, moving through the shadows at the back of the balcony. She was still writing, her pen moving rapidly across the page. I could see her profile in the dim light reflected from the stage, the sharp intelligence in her eyes, the focused set of her jaw. "Interesting show?" I whispered, sliding into the empty seat beside her. She didn't startle, didn't even seem surprised. She simply turned her head and looked at me with those penetrating green eyes. "I was wondering when you'd approach me, Mr. Brown." Every muscle in my body tensed. She knew my name, my real name. That was impossible unless... "Who are you?" I demanded, keeping my voice low. "Someone like you," she said simply. She closed her notebook and slipped it back into her reticule. Though from a different time, and with a different purpose, my mind reeled. Another Chrononaut? But that didn't make sense. The Bureau had strict protocols about multiple agents in the same temporal location. Unless she wasn't from the Bureau, unless she was from a different organization entirely. Temporal Services? I guessed. The rival time agency from the future, known for more aggressive intervention policies. She smiled. "You're quick. That's good. We don't have much time." "Time for what?" "To stop what's about to happen." I shook my head. "I can't intervene. You know the rules. The Temporal Prime Directive is about to be violated anyway," she interrupted, "by forces you don't even know exist. Look, Mr. Brown, may I call you Nicola?" I nodded warily. "Nicola, you overheard that conversation earlier. The men under the stairs. You know there's something wrong here, something that doesn't match the historical record you were briefed on. How did you..." "I've been tracking them for 3 days now. There's a group, a temporal anomaly that's been manipulating events surrounding the assassination. They're not from our time or yours. They're from much further ahead, and they're trying to alter the timeline for their own purposes." "What purposes?" She leaned closer and I caught the faint scent of lavender perfume. "They want to ensure that Lincoln dies exactly as history records, but they also want to introduce additional chaos, blame the British, spark a war with England, reshape the entire geopolitical landscape of the late 19th century. It's already started to diverge from the original timeline. If we don't stop them, the future we both come from might cease to exist." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. "Why should I believe you?" "Because deep down you already do. You felt it the moment you arrived. The temporal displacement was clean, but the timeline felt wrong, didn't it? Like static on a radio frequency. That's the divergence. That's the contamination." She was right. I had felt something off, but I'd attributed it to nerves, to the weight of the mission. Now I realized it had been something more. "Even if what you're saying is true," I said carefully, "we still can't prevent Lincoln's assassination. That's a fixed point in history. Too many consequences flow from it." "I know. And I'm not suggesting we save Lincoln, that would be catastrophic. But we need to stop the additional conspirators, the ones who are trying to implicate the British government. If they succeed, the United States and Britain will go to war within a year. France will intervene. The entire European balance of power will collapse decades ahead of schedule. Millions will die who were never supposed to die." I checked my chronometer. 1 hour and 43 minutes until the shot. "What do you need me to do?" "Help me identify and neutralize the temporal agents who are here to manipulate the aftermath. There are 3 of them that I've tracked so far. 2 you heard speaking. The 3rd is somewhere in this theater right now, and he's the most dangerous." "Why is he here?" "To make sure certain documents are found on Booth's body after he's killed. Documents that implicate British intelligence in the plot. Forged, of course, but convincing enough to spark outrage. We need to stop those documents from being planted." I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of the decision before me. Everything in my training screamed that this was wrong, that I should report back to the Bureau, let them handle it. But if she was right, by the time I reported and they sent a team, it would be too late. The documents would be planted, the false trail laid, and history would careen off its rails toward a future that had never existed. "All right," I said. "I'm in. But we do this carefully. We stop the manipulators without interfering with the actual assassination. Booth still kills Lincoln. History still unfolds. We just remove the additional contamination." She extended her hand. "Alexandra Reeves, Temporal Services, year 2187. Thank you for trusting me." I shook her hand, noting the strength in her grip, the calluses that suggested she was more than just an observer. "Nicola Brown, Temporal Observation Bureau, year 2156. Don't make me regret this." She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "I'll do my best. Now we need to move. The first target will make his move in about 20 minutes. He's going to intercept Booth's personal effects before they're secured by the authorities. We need to stop him and recover whatever he's trying to plant." We rose from our seats and moved toward the exit, but as we did, I caught sight of movement in the presidential box. The door was opening, and people were entering. My breath caught. There he was. Abraham Lincoln. Tall, gaunt, with that distinctive profile that every American knew from photographs and drawings. He moved slowly, waving to the crowd, and the entire theater erupted in applause. People stood cheering as the president took his seat. His wife, Mary, was with him, along with their guests for the evening, Major Henry Rathbone and his fiancée, Clara Harris. Lincoln smiled and nodded to the crowd, then settled into his rocking chair, the one positioned to give him the best view of the stage. He looked tired, I thought. The weight of 4 years of war had carved lines into his face, but there was also something peaceful in his expression, a relief that the bloodshed was finally over. I felt Alexandra's hand on my arm pulling me away. "We can't watch," she whispered. "We have work to do." She was right. But it took everything in me to turn away from that box, knowing what was coming, knowing that in less than 90 minutes, that peaceful expression would be gone forever, and the nation would be plunged into mourning. We hurried through the corridor and down the back stairs. Alexandra moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where she was going. I followed, trusting her knowledge of the situation, even though every instinct told me I was violating everything I'd sworn to uphold as a chrononaut. We emerged into a narrow alley behind the theater. The night air was cool, and I could hear the distant sounds of the play continuing inside, the audience's laughter filtering through the walls. "Where is he?" I asked. "There's a boarding house 2 blocks from here. That's where Booth has been staying. Our target knows that after the assassination, authorities will raid the house and collect Booth's belongings. He's going to break in within the next few minutes and plant the forged documents among Booth's papers. We need to intercept him before he can do that." We ran through the dark streets, avoiding the main thoroughfares where celebrations continued. The boarding house appeared ahead, a modest 3-story brick building on H Street. A single lamp burned in a downstairs window. "How do we know he's not already inside?" I asked. "Because I've been watching the place. He won't move until closer to the assassination. He needs the house to be empty. Everyone will be out, either at the theater or at the taverns. We have maybe 5 minutes." We positioned ourselves in the shadows across the street, behind a delivery wagon. My heart was racing, not from exertion but from the enormity of what we were doing. This was no longer observation. This was intervention. This was exactly what the Bureau had warned us never to do. But Alexandra's logic was sound. If foreign temporal agents were contaminating the timeline, we had a responsibility to protect the integrity of history, even if that meant bending our own rules. "There," Alexandra whispered. A figure emerged from the darkness at the end of the street. Male, average height, wearing period clothing but moving with a fluidity that marked him as someone from a more advanced time. He approached the boarding house, looking left and right, then produced something from his pocket, a tool that glowed faintly blue in the darkness. "Temporal lockpick," Alexandra breathed. "Standard issue for time agents. He's going in." We waited until he'd entered the house, then crossed the street quickly. The front door was slightly ajar. Alexandra produced her own device, scanning it across the threshold. No alarms, no traps. He's confident. Probably doesn't think anyone's watching. We slipped inside. The boarding house was quiet, empty as Alexandra had predicted. The smell of old wood and coal dust filled my nostrils. We could hear movement upstairs, footsteps, the creak of floorboards. Alexandra pointed up the stairs and I nodded. We ascended slowly, carefully, keeping to the edges of the steps to minimize noise. The second-floor hallway was dark except for a sliver of light coming from beneath one of the doors. Booth's room. Alexandra reached into her reticule and pulled out what looked like a small pistol, but I recognized it as a neural disruptor, a non-lethal weapon that would incapacitate the target without killing him. She saw me looking and whispered, "We can't leave bodies, just need to stop him and recover the documents." I didn't have a weapon. The Bureau didn't arm its observers, but my chronofiber coat had reinforced plating, and I'd been trained in hand-to-hand combat. It would have to be enough. We positioned ourselves on either side of the door. Alexandra held up 3 fingers, counting down silently. 3, 2, 1. She kicked the door open and rushed in, disruptor raised. I followed immediately behind her. The man spun around, surprise flashing across his face. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 30, with dark hair and sharp features. In his hands were several documents, yellowed paper covered in what looked like official seals and handwriting. "Drop them," Alexandra commanded. "Drop them now, and we can all walk away from this." The man's eyes flicked between us, calculating. Then he smiled. "Temporal services and the Bureau working together? That's unprecedented and pointless." "The documents," I said. "Hand them over. You don't understand what you're interfering with," he said. His accent was strange. Not quite British, not quite American. Something evolved from both. "This isn't about changing history. This is about correcting it." "Correcting it?" Alexandra's voice was cold. "By starting a war that kills millions? By preventing a far worse future," he shot back. "You two are so focused on your precious prime directive that you can't see the bigger picture. The timeline we're living in, the one you're trying to protect, leads to catastrophe. We've seen it. In our time, the late 23rd century, the world is dying because of decisions made in this era. If Britain and America go to war now, certain alliances never form. Certain technologies never develop. The catastrophe is averted. That's not how temporal mechanics works," I said. "You can't predict all the consequences of a change this large. You could make things worse. Could being the operative word. But doing nothing guarantees disaster." "I won't ask again," Alexandra said, her finger tightening on the disruptor's trigger. "Drop the documents." The man's smile widened. "You won't shoot me. If you kill me, my chrono device will trigger an emergency extraction that will destabilize this entire temporal location. Everyone in a 3-block radius will be affected, including your precious president at the theater." My blood went cold. He was bluffing. He had to be. But Alexandra's hand wavered. She believed him, or at least couldn't risk that he was telling the truth. "Smart girl," the man said. "Now, I'm going to finish my work here, and you're going to let me. Because the alternative is that we all destroy this timeline together." He turned back to the desk, preparing to place the documents among Booth's papers. I saw Alexandra's jaw clench, saw her struggling with the decision. She couldn't shoot him, but we couldn't let him complete his mission either. I did the only thing I could think of. I rushed him. He was fast, enhanced with temporal augmentations like all modern agents. But I had surprise on my side, and I hit him hard, driving him away from the desk. The documents scattered across the floor. We crashed into a small table and I heard wood splinter. He fought back viciously, landing a blow to my ribs that drove the air from my lungs. But I held on, grappling with him, trying to pin him down. Alexandra moved quickly, scooping up the documents with one hand while keeping her disruptor trained on us with the other. "Got them," she shouted. The man roared in frustration and landed a hard punch to my jaw that sent stars exploding across my vision. I stumbled back and he reached for the chrono device on his wrist. "Don't!" Alexandra screamed, aiming the disruptor. But she was too late. He activated something and a blinding white light filled the room. I felt a wave of energy wash over me, making my skin tingle and my teeth ache. The temporal displacement field. He was executing an emergency extraction, but something went wrong. The light flickered, sputtered, The man's face contorted in horror. No, the coordinates are corrupted. The light exploded outward and he vanished, but not cleanly. I could feel the temporal disruption in the air, like a wound in reality itself. The extraction had been unstable. Where did he go? I gasped, holding my jaw. Alexandra was scanning her own device frantically. I don't know. The temporal signature is scattered across multiple points. He could have ended up anywhere, anywhen. Or he could have been dispersed entirely across the timeline. She looked up at me, her face pale. That's what happens when you try to force an extraction through temporal interference. He might have just killed himself. I felt sick. This wasn't supposed to happen. Nobody was supposed to die. The documents? She held them up. Yellowed paper covered in forged writing, official-looking seals, signatures that would have implicated the British government in Lincoln's assassination. If these had been found, the outcry would have been immediate and overwhelming. We need to destroy them, I said. No. We need to get them back to our respective agencies for analysis. Understanding how these were made, who made them, could help us identify the larger organization behind this. There are more of them, at least 2 more here tonight, and probably more throughout the timeline, making other alterations we haven't detected yet. This is bigger than one rogue agent, Nicola. I checked my chronometer. 48 minutes until the shot. We need to get back to the theater. If there are more agents there, we need to find them before Booth makes his move. Once Lincoln is dead, they'll disappear into the chaos and we'll never catch them. We left the boarding house quickly, making sure everything looked undisturbed except for the broken furniture from our fight. If anyone came to investigate later, they'd just think there'd been a burglary, nothing more. The streets were still full of revelers, but there was a different quality to the celebration now. Drunker, louder, more desperate, as if some part of the city's collective unconscious knew that this moment of joy was fleeting, that darkness was coming. We made our way back toward Ford's Theater. As we walked, Alexandra spoke quietly, urgently. The other 2 agents will be focused on the aftermath. One will try to manipulate the investigation, planting evidence that points toward a broader conspiracy involving British agents. The other will be working to ensure that certain witnesses give specific testimony that supports the false narrative. How do we stop them? I'm not sure yet. They're better hidden than the first one. I've been tracking temporal signatures, but they're using dampeners to mask their presence. I only found the first one because he got careless. I thought about the conversation I'd overheard. The 2 men under the stairs. One of them has to be a temporal agent. Good. That's a start. Can you identify them? I only heard their voices, didn't see their faces, but one was older, confident, a leader. The other was younger, nervous. The older one is likely the agent. The younger one might just be a local accomplice. These agents sometimes recruit people from the time period to help them, easier than doing everything themselves. We were approaching the theater now. The play was still ongoing, and I could hear laughter from inside. Less than half an hour until intermission. Less than 45 minutes until Booth would climb those stairs, enter the corridor behind the presidential box, and fire the shot that would echo through history. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of knowledge. I knew exactly what was going to happen, exactly when, exactly how, and I had to stand there and let it happen. Because that was history. That was the timeline we were sworn to protect. You all right? Alexandra asked, noticing my distress, just thinking about what's coming. I know. It never gets easier watching these moments. Knowing you could stop them, but knowing you can't. She paused, then added quietly, I was at Dallas in 1963. Watched Kennedy die. That was the worst one. I looked at her with new respect. How do you do it? How do you keep doing this? Because the alternative is worse. If we don't protect the timeline, if we let people change things for their own purposes, no matter how noble they think those purposes are, we risk unraveling everything. All of history, all of civilization, reduced to chaos because someone thought they knew better than the natural flow of events. We entered through the main entrance this time, blending with the crowd. The lobby was full of people chatting during a brief scene change. I scanned faces, looking for anything out of place, but everyone looked authentic, period appropriate. If there were temporal agents here, they were well hidden. The presidential box, I said suddenly. That's where Booth will strike. If the other agents are trying to manipulate the aftermath, they might be positioning themselves there to observe, to make sure everything goes according to plan. Good thinking. Let's check the area. We made our way through the theater, climbing the stairs to the dress circle. The corridor behind the presidential box was guarded by a single man, John Parker, Lincoln's bodyguard for the evening, though history would record that he would abandon his post to watch the play and have a drink, leaving the president unprotected. As we approached, I saw Parker was indeed not at his position. The corridor was empty. The door to the presidential box was closed, but I could hear voices from inside, Lincoln and his guests enjoying the play. "Where is everyone?" I whispered. "Parker's probably already left his post," Alexandra said. "He goes to the tavern next door. That's how Booth gets access." A chill ran down my spine. It was happening exactly as history recorded, which meant Booth was somewhere in this building right now, preparing, waiting for his moment. "Check for temporal signatures," I said. "If there's an agent nearby." "On it." Alexandra pulled out her scanning device, holding it discreetly at her side. The small screen flickered with data. "I'm getting something. Faint, but definitely there. Temporal displacement residue recent within the last hour." "Where?" "Close. Very close." She moved slowly along the corridor, following the signal. It led us to a small alcove near the presidential box, a shadowy space where someone could observe without being seen. And there, standing in the darkness, was a figure. He turned as we approached, and I recognized the voice when he spoke. "I wondered if you'd find me." It was the older man from the conversation I'd overheard. Up close I could see he was perhaps 60, with silver hair and cold blue eyes. He wore the clothes of a wealthy gentleman of the period, but there was something about his bearing, his presence, that marked him as an outsider. "You're the one orchestrating this," Alexandra said. "The alterations to the timeline." "Orchestrating?" He smiled. "I prefer to think of it as curating. History is messy, Miss Reeves, full of accidents and missed opportunities. I simply ensure that events unfold in the most beneficial way possible." "Beneficial for who?" "For everyone. For the future. For all of humanity." His eyes shifted to me. "You understand, don't you, Mr. Brown? You're a man of science, of reason. You can see that sometimes the ends justify the means. Not when those means involve manipulating history for your own agenda," I said. "My agenda is survival. In my time, the late 23rd century, the world is dying. Wars, plagues, environmental collapse, all stemming from decisions made in this era. The alliance between Britain and America grows too strong, too complacent. They dominate the world stage without challenge, and that leads to stagnation, to corruption, to the very disasters we're trying to prevent. So you're rewriting history to create a different future," Alexandra said. "One where your people come out on top. One where humanity survives. Is that so wrong?" I thought about his words, about the logic that had led him here. Part of me understood the temptation. If you could see the future, see the disasters coming, wouldn't you want to prevent them? Wouldn't you feel obligated to act? But I also knew the arrogance in that thinking. The assumption that you knew better than the billions of people who would live and die based on your decisions. The belief that you could predict all the consequences of such a massive change. "It's wrong because it's not your decision to make," I said. "History belongs to the people who live it, not to us. We're just observers, witnesses. We don't get to play God." "God?" He laughed bitterly. "God is absent from history, Mr. Brown. All we have is human will and human choice. And I choose to act." Alexandra raised her disruptor. "It's over. Your agent is gone. Your documents are secured. You can't complete your mission." "Can't I?" He gestured toward the presidential box. "In 15 minutes, John Wilkes Booth will enter that corridor. He'll shoot Abraham Lincoln in the head. The president will die 9 hours later. That's history. That's the fixed point. And in the chaos that follows, I'll ensure that the evidence points toward British involvement. My people are already in place. Witnesses who will testify to seeing British agents meeting with Booth. Officials who will find convenient documents, not the clumsy forgeries our dead friend was carrying, but more subtle hints, more damning connections. "We'll expose them all," Alexandra said. "We'll stop every single one." "Will you? How?" "By revealing yourselves. By explaining that you're time travelers trying to protect the timeline. Who would believe you? You'd be locked up as lunatics while my work continues." He was right. And we both knew it. We couldn't go public. We couldn't expose the existence of time travel. That in itself would be a massive temporal disruption. "There has to be another way," I said. "There isn't." His voice was sad now, almost gentle. "You two are honorable people. I can see that. You believe in the rules and the protocols, but sometimes rules must be broken for the greater good. History will judge us, Mr. Brown, and I believe history will find that I was right." A sound from the corridor made us all freeze. Footsteps. Someone was approaching. "He's early," Alexandra whispered. Through the dim light I saw him. John Wilkes Booth, the famous actor, the Confederate sympathizer, the assassin. He moved quietly up the corridor, his hand inside his coat where I knew he carried a Derringer pistol and a knife. He didn't see us in the shadows of the alcove. He moved past, focused entirely on his target, on the door that would lead him to the presidential box. My heart was hammering. This was it. This was the moment. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to stop him, to warn Lincoln to change what was about to happen. But I couldn't. I stood frozen, watching Booth approach the door. The temporal agent beside us was watching too, his expression one of grim satisfaction. "History unfolds," he murmured. "And with it our future is born." Booth reached the door. He opened it slowly, quietly. The play was reaching its climactic moment, and the audience's attention was fully on the stage. Booth slipped inside the box. I couldn't see what happened next, but I knew. I'd studied this moment 1,000 times. Booth would aim his Derringer at the back of Lincoln's head. He would fire at close range. The president would slump forward. Mary Lincoln would scream. Major Rathbone would try to stop Booth, and the assassin would slash him with his knife. Then Booth would leap from the box onto the stage, breaking his leg in the process, and shout something about avenging the South before fleeing into the night. The shot rang out, sharp, final, splitting the night like thunder. A woman's scream. "The president has been shot!" Chaos erupted. People in the theater began shouting, running. On stage, the actors froze, confused. The orchestra stopped playing. And in the alcove, the temporal agent smiled. "Now my work begins." He started to move toward the corridor, but Alexandra stepped in front of him, disruptor raised. "You're not going anywhere. You can't stop me. You can't stop all of us. The pieces are already in motion." "Maybe not, but I can stop you." For a moment, they stood facing each other, and I saw the calculation in the agent's eyes. He was weighing his options, considering whether to risk calling her bluff. Then he lunged, not at Alexandra, but at me. His hand grabbed my chrono device, trying to activate it, trying to create another temporal disruption that would scatter us across time. I reacted instinctively, grabbing his wrist, fighting for control. Alexandra fired, but the neural disruptor's beam went wide in the struggle, hitting the wall. We grappled, crashing against the corridor wall. He was strong, enhanced like the other agent had been, but I had rage on my side. Rage at the manipulation, at the arrogance, at the violation of everything I believed in. I heard shouting from the presidential box, "Get a doctor! Someone get a doctor!" People were running everywhere now. In the confusion, nobody noticed us fighting in the darkened alcove. The agent's fingers found the activation stud on my chrono device. I felt it begin to power up, felt the temporal displacement field starting to form. If he succeeded in activating it, we'd both be thrown into the time stream, scattered across decades or centuries. "Nicola!" Alexandra shouted. "The failsafe! Trigger the failsafe!" The failsafe. Every chrono device had one, an emergency shutdown that would prevent unauthorized temporal displacement. But triggering it would lock the device for 72 hours. I'd be stranded in 1865, with no way to extract myself. I made the decision in a heartbeat. I triggered the failsafe. The chrono device made a high-pitched whine and died, the displacement field collapsing. The agent's face contorted in fury. "You fool! You've trapped us both here!" "At least you won't finish your mission," I growled. Alexandra appeared beside us, pressing her disruptor to the agent's temple. "It's over, release him now." The agent hesitated, then let go of me. I stumbled back, breathing hard, checking my chrono device. The display was dead, the failsafe engaged. I was stuck in 1865 for the next 3 days. "What do we do with him?" I asked. "I have extraction capabilities for 2 people," Alexandra said. "I can take him back to temporal services for trial. But that means you're on your own until your failsafe disengages." "I can manage 3 days in 1865. It won't be easy. The city will be in chaos, martial law, manhunts. Everyone will be suspects. You'll need to stay hidden." "I'll manage." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "You're a good man, Nicola Brown. I'm glad we met." "Likewise." She secured the agent's hands with what looked like ordinary rope, but was probably some kind of temporal restraint. He glared at me with pure hatred. "This changes nothing. My people will continue the work. The timeline will be altered." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe you've overestimated your importance. History has a way of correcting itself, of finding its proper course despite people like you trying to force it in new directions." Alexandra activated her chrono device. "I need to go. The window for extraction is closing. Will you be all right?" "I'll be fine. 3 days, then I'm home. Look me up when you get back to your time. We should compare notes, maybe coordinate our agency's efforts. This won't be the last temporal incursion we face." "I'd like that." She smiled, and for just a moment, I saw real warmth in her eyes. Then the displacement field formed around her and the agent, blue light enveloping them both. They shimmered, became translucent, and vanished. I was alone in the alcove. Around me, chaos continued. People ran past, shouting about the president, about the assassin, about finding doctors and alerting authorities. Through it all, I heard Mary Lincoln's anguished wails from the presidential box. I slipped out of the alcove and made my way through the panicked crowd, heading for the exit. Nobody paid attention to me. Everyone was too focused on the horror that had just occurred. Outside, the street was filled with people who'd heard the commotion. Soldiers were running toward the theater. Someone was shouting that it was a Confederate plot, that they were attacking the government. The joy and celebration of earlier in the evening had evaporated, replaced by fear and anger. I walked away from the theater, pulling my coat tight against the night air. My jaw ached where the agent had hit me. My ribs were bruised. But I was alive, and more importantly, I'd stopped the conspiracy to alter the timeline. At least I hoped I had. I found a small hotel 3 blocks away and paid for a room with period currency I'd brought for emergencies. The clerk barely looked at me, too distracted by the news that was spreading through the city like wildfire. The president was dying. The assassin had escaped. Nobody knew what would happen next. In my room, I sat on the narrow bed and listened to the sounds of the city transforming around me. Church bells began to toll. People shouted in the streets. Soldiers marched past, their boots echoing on the cobblestones. I thought about Lincoln, lying in a boarding house across the street from the theater where they'd carried him because they couldn't move him further. He was dying. Right now, as I sat here, he was dying. And I hadn't stopped it. I'd let it happen because that's what history demanded. But I'd also stopped something else. Something that could have been worse. A war between America and Britain. Millions of deaths. A future torn apart by one man's arrogant certainty that he knew better than history itself. Had I done the right thing? The Bureau would say no. I'd violated my mission parameters. I'd intervened when I should have only observed. I'd compromised my extraction by triggering the failsafe. But sitting there in that small hotel room, listening to a nation begin to mourn its murdered president, I knew in my gut that I'd made the right choice. Some rules were worth breaking. Some interventions were necessary. I just hoped the Bureau would see it that way. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. I watched Washington transform from a city celebrating victory to one consumed by grief and rage. Booth was hunted like an animal, eventually cornered and killed in a barn in Virginia. His co-conspirators were rounded up, tried, and most were executed. I scanned the newspapers obsessively, looking for any sign that the false narrative about British involvement was taking hold. But there was nothing. No mysterious witnesses claiming to have seen British agents. no convenient documents surfacing. The conspiracy was reported as it had always been reported in my history books: Booth and his Confederate sympathizers, acting out of desperation and delusion. Alexandra and I had succeeded. The timeline was intact. On the morning of the third day, my chrono device came back online. I found a secluded alley at dawn, when the streets were still empty, and activated the extraction sequence. The displacement field formed around me, and I felt the familiar sensation of being pulled through time. When I materialized in the Temporal Observation Bureau's extraction facility, I was immediately surrounded by security. The debrief lasted 6 hours. I told them everything: the temporal agents, the conspiracy, the alliance with Alexandra Reeves from Temporal Services, the fight, the extraction of the enemy agent. They weren't happy. Protocol violations were mentioned repeatedly. My career was discussed. There was talk of reassignment, of retraining, of suspension. But there was also grudging acknowledgement that I'd prevented a timeline alteration, that I'd acted to protect the integrity of history, even if I'd bent the rules to do it. In the end, they gave me a formal reprimand and 2 weeks of administrative leave. I was fine with that. I needed time to process everything that had happened. I tried to contact Alexandra Reeves at Temporal Services, but the interagency protocols were complex. It took 3 days before I finally got through to her. "Nicola," she said, her voice crackling slightly over the temporal communication link. "I was hoping you'd call. How did the debrief go on your end?" "About as well as yours, I suspect. Lots of stern faces and talk about protocols. But the important thing is we stopped them. The agent we extracted is being interrogated. He's giving us information about the larger organization behind the incursion." "There really is a larger organization?" "Oh yes. Turns out they call themselves the Correctors, a group from the late 23rd century who believe the timeline needs to be actively managed to prevent future catastrophes. They've been making small alterations throughout history, testing their methods. Lincoln's assassination was going to be their first major operation. Was going to be. We shut them down. With the evidence from our mission and the testimony of the captured agent, both our agencies launched a joint operation. We've identified and neutralized most of their operations throughout the timeline. It'll take years to fully clean up the mess they made, but the major threat is over." I felt a weight lift from my chest. "That's good news." "It is. And it's partly because of what you did that night. If you hadn't trusted me, hadn't been willing to bend your precious rules, those documents would have been planted, and we'd be living in a very different world right now. I'm not sure the Bureau sees it that way. Agencies never do." I could hear the smile in her voice. "But we know the truth. We did what needed to be done." There was a pause. Then she added, "I'm coming to your time next week. Agency coordination meetings. Maybe we could get dinner, compare notes in a less chaotic environment." I found myself smiling. "I'd like that. It's a date then. I'll send you the details." The call ended, and I sat back in my apartment looking out at the city of 2156. Flying cars passed by my window. Holographic advertisements flickered on the buildings across the street. Everything was as it had always been, as it should be. But I was different. I'd crossed a line that night in Washington. I'd stopped being just an observer and become a participant in history. And while I knew I couldn't make that choice every time, couldn't intervene in every injustice I witnessed, I also knew that I'd do it again if the circumstances warranted it. Because sometimes, preserving history means more than just watching it unfold. Sometimes it means fighting for it, protecting it from those who would twist it for their own purposes. I thought about Lincoln, dying in that boarding house as the first light of dawn crept through the windows. I thought about Booth, cornered and killed, his grandiose dreams of avenging the Confederacy dying with him. I thought about all the people whose lives had been touched by that night, by that one shot that changed everything. And I thought about the future, the one we'd saved, the one that would continue to unfold in all its messy, unpredictable glory. My wrist device chimed, displaying a new mission briefing. Paris, 1889. The Eiffel Tower's inauguration. Observe and report. No intervention. I accepted the mission. But as I began preparing for the temporal displacement, I couldn't help but wonder what I'd find there. What threats might be lurking in the shadows of history. What choices I might be forced to make. Because I knew now, with absolute certainty, that the past wasn't dead. It wasn't even past. It was alive, constantly being fought over, constantly under threat from those who thought they could improve it, correct it, reshape it to match their vision of what the world should be. And as long as people like that existed, people like me, people like Alexandra, would have to stand against them, not just as observers, but as guardians. The Temporal Observation Bureau might not like it, the protocols might forbid it, but deep down, I knew it was true. History was worth fighting for, even if that fight meant breaking the very rules designed to protect it. I checked my equipment one last time, adjusted my coat, and prepared for extraction to Paris. But before I activated the sequence, I looked at the Lincoln mission report still open on my display. The final line of the official record stared back at me. Mission accomplished. Timeline preserved. No anomalies detected. No anomalies. If they only knew. I smiled to myself and activated the chrono device. The blue light of the displacement field enveloped me, and I felt the familiar pull of temporal energy. But this time I wasn't afraid. This time, I was ready. Ready for whatever history had waiting for me. Ready to observe, yes, but also ready to act if necessary. Ready to be more than just a witness to the past. Ready to be its guardian. The light grew brighter, the pull stronger, and then I was gone. Pulled across the centuries toward my next mission. Toward whatever dangers and choices awaited me there. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew I'd return to that night in Washington. Not physically. Time travel to the same historical event was forbidden. But in my memories, in my dreams, that night had changed me, transformed me from a simple observer into something more. I'd become what every chrononaut secretly feared and hoped to be. Someone who mattered. Someone whose choices made a difference. And as I tumbled through the temporal stream toward 1889 Paris, I wondered if Alexandra felt the same way. If she too carried the weight of that night in Washington, the knowledge of what we'd prevented, the burden of the secret we now shared. I guess I'd find out over dinner. The thought made me smile as the temporal displacement completed and I materialized in a new time, a new place, ready for whatever came next. Because history wasn't just something to be observed. It was something to be protected, defended, fought for. And I was ready to fight, for as long as necessary, for as many missions as it took, for the sake of a future I'd never see but had helped to save. That was the burden of the Chrononaut. That was the weight we carried. And somehow, standing in the shadow of the incomplete Eiffel Tower, watching the last rays of 19th century sunlight paint the Paris sky in shades of gold and red, I knew I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm Nicola Brown, a traveler through time and history. If you enjoyed this adventure of mine, subscribe to the channel and share it.